Okay, so I'm Chris. I'm with the School of Global Studies at Thammasat University in Bangkok. Over there we're building some interesting things. We're doing a ideas blog for our students where it's becoming a student-run blog where they have the opportunity to do videos and interviews and blog posts and things like that. And then we're also starting a new vertical where we're doing case studies around social innovation, social entrepreneurship. So if that's of interest, if you know any interesting stories, please reach out to me. We'd love to hear about them and try to make those into educational tools. Okay, so I've got 3 ideas and 1 plea for you guys that I want to share. So I'll give you the 3 ideas. That's my main argument. And if you agree with those, if those make sense, then I want you to go home today and think really hard about the 1 plea. So first of all, the economy may be heading into a 4th industrial revolution. There may not be enough good work to go around, and our educational systems are not geared for the future. Okay, so those are the arguments. I'm gonna give you a lot of information to hopefully support those arguments, and then the plea that I'm gonna give you is that we need to think about where we're headed as a society, and how our schools can be a force for inclusivity and progress. Okay, so we'll go into the arguments. So the world of work evolves. Any complex system changes over time. So our society is changing. We started a long time ago. I'm going to get off track. Let me not do that. Let me just go right into where we need to go with the 4th industrial revolution. So we had mechanization, very simple, wind-powered, steam-powered, water-powered machines. Did things like grind our grains. Very, very simple stuff, but it helped us to do more than we could do with just manual power. Then we had mass production. We had assembly lines, things coming down, people doing very simple jobs over and over and over. That helped us create even more. And then we had computers and automation come in, and robots coming in and taking the place of people, producing even more. Now we think we're going into the 4th one, which is cyber physical systems. That's just academic code for robots and artificial intelligence and computers, and all of it being networked and being able to do all kinds of flexible stuff and pushing humans out of more and more work, basically. Okay, so this is distribution of labor force in the US from 1840 to 2010. So for millennia, basically all we did was make sure we had enough to eat, right? And then going back a couple hundred years ago, we started doing other things. And the food production went down, 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 down. From back still in 1840s, it was still almost 70% of what we did in the US. Now it's like 2%. So industrialization took off. We were making stuff. And around 1950, that peaked and started coming back down. And so services took off back in the same time period and just keeps going up and up and up. So in the US, people don't do things. They don't make things anymore. They do stuff. That's what our economy is based on. It's thinking work. It's doing things for people. It's not making things anymore. And this is interesting. This is the UK. This is the 1800 to 2000, so a slightly different time period. You've got basically the same curve. Agriculture, industry, and services. But you got one little extra line down here where these academics broke out something different. From around 1970, 1980 up to 2000, the only thing that was taking a larger portion of the economy was something they called the quaternary sector, which was research and development. So basically that's where all job growth came from in the UK the last 20 years of the last century. Now if we go back to the prior study, I had the first chart in the US. This is another look at the same thing. But this is how much of GDP each of the 3 sectors accounts for. So agriculture back in 1840 was almost 50% of what we produced. By 2010, it was about 2 to 3% of the economy, and we produce a heck of a lot more food than we did back in 1840. So what used to be almost half of what we were making is now just 2% of something that's much, 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 much larger. And yet, it's nothing. I mean, it's most of what we're doing is services. So where are the new jobs? There's a really interesting study that takes a look at work, and it puts it in a matrix: cognitive versus non-cognitive, routine versus non-routine. Cognitive is thinking work. Non-cognitive is doing work. So it's like you're a mechanic versus cognitive work is you're an academic. Routine versus non-routine. Routine work is the mechanic replaces flat tires. It's very simple, they know what to do, they get the right tire, they put it on. Non-routine would be someone comes in with a classic car, it won't start, there are no parts available, and you have general knowledge and you have to figure out what the problem is. Well, if we look at the last 14, 15 years that this study looked at, the routine cognitive and routine manual are down. So basically what people assume if you ask them, where did the jobs go, where did they come from over this time period, they think it's going to be cognitive versus non-cognitive. But the breakout is actually routine versus non-routine. So even cognitive jobs that are routine are going down. So if you're like an accountant, you're losing your job to TurboTax, or you're fighting other people. So it's very, it's not what people tend to expect happen. So what is happening is the non-routine jobs are where the jobs are coming from. The question is, can we get enough of those to replace the jobs that are going away? One other question to look at is, this is the weekly work hours in the US and UK from 1870 to 2000. For a long, long time, it trended down from over 70 hours a week, down to 60, down to 50, down to 40, and in the middle of the last century, that flattened out. And basically that was a choice. People decided they wanted to keep jobs at about 40 hours a week because they could package up benefits and everything together. So that was a choice. But what happens if we continue to keep it there and the amount of work continues to drop? We have less jobs for more people. So we have to decide if that's what we want to continue to do. So now my question to you is, what's the purpose of education? We probably know what we thought it was when we went through it. We may know what we think it is, especially if we're involved with it. But is it what it needs to be for tomorrow? We got a short video here. Start here. Yeah.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity, and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which is if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore.
Okay, so I think probably most of us agree with that now. 50 years ago, if you went to college, you had a belief that when you finished, there was going to be a job waiting for you. You'd be able to find one easily. These days, you get a degree, and depending on what that degree is in, you may or may not have a job waiting for you. You may have a very hard time finding a job. You have advantages, for sure, by having the degree, but you don't have a promise anymore. So I think we need to rethink about, what is the purpose of education and how can it include, because if we keep going down the path we're going on, it's going to become less and less inclusive. Okay, so right now I think we have backwards looking educational systems. And in times where things are pretty stable, that's probably fine, right? If things aren't changing a whole lot, what we needed yesterday is probably fine today. But if things are changing fast, what we needed yesterday is not helping us. So we need to start thinking really hard about where we're going. As Howard Zinn said this, you can't be neutral in a moving train. He was talking about politics, but I think it works for any big societal systems. Because any big societal system is complex and it's going to evolve. And anything that's evolving is changing, and if you're not changing with it, you're getting left behind. So now it's the hard, scary part. We have to look into our crystal balls. We have to project forward and try to look at the trends and figure out, what do our students need? And how can we include them in a better way so that they get something useful out of it and they can go be productive in society. So it's going to take a lot of research and a lot of hard thinking and a lot of mistakes. But we have to look forward instead of backward and think, how do we do this in a way that works better, and then adjust as we go. We don't do this once and then say, okay, now we've done it. You know, it needs to be an ongoing process of, this is our near term and this is our long term, and we're going to update them every once in a while and keep going. So here, don't worry, degree programs aren't going away. I'm not saying we're going to change the programs overnight. I'm not looking for a wholesale radical change. I'm just saying we need to think about, do we need to turn the ship a little and do something that's more helpful. So back to the start. I gave you 3 ideas. The economy may be heading into another industrial revolution. I think it is. To me, it seems obvious. We'll see. Time will tell. There may not be enough good work to go around. A lot of people believe that the technology that takes jobs away, other technology will create other opportunities. It has in many ways in the past, but there's been a lot of turmoil in those transitions. So even if we are going to get those new jobs that are going to give something for people to do in the future, how do we help get through that turmoil as easily as possible? And our educational systems are currently not geared for the future. So we need to think, like I said, about where we're headed as a society and how our schools can be a force for inclusivity and progress. We all have a role to play, especially those of us who are involved in the educational systems, but I think there's a lot that we can do outside of the educational systems. There's also a lot that we can do to take our educational systems and open them up to more people than we have. Right now we're trending in the wrong direction, I think, but I think if we think about it and we spend some time and try to adapt, I think we can go back in a better direction and help make this a better society overall. Okay, so I think we will hold questions until we have the panel in a bit. Here are all my contacts and links. Just so you guys know, I do some sustainability work and I have a publishing company in case anyone's interested. And I'll go ahead and hand off. Thank you very much.